You feel your heart pounding in your chest as you stare at the doll outside on the porch. The lights in the house flicker, a brief moment of total darkness, and when they come back on, the doll seems to be closer to the window. You instinctively take a step back, fear rising within you. What is happening? How did it end up out there? Suddenly, your phone rings. The loud, unexpected sound makes you jump. You run to get it, feeling an absurd hope that someone, anyone, can give you an answer. However, when you look through the viewfinder, the fear intensifies. The number on the screen has no name, just digits. 00000000000. A figure that seems impossible. You hesitate, but end up answering. On the other end, all you hear is a soft sound, like running water, and then that familiar whisper, "I see you." You hang up immediately, fear taking over you. You try to compose yourself, but before you can move away from the phone, the light flickers again and boom! A loud sound, coming from the living room window. Something hit it hard. Your body shakes, but you know you need to see what's going on. As you get closer, shock paralyzes you. Wet footprints are now on the window glass, as if someone or something is trying to get in. You take a few steps back, your thoughts spinning in circles. What does this mean? Was it just your imagination playing tricks on you? Or could that rustling, those footprints, be real? You decide to check the doll. She's still out there. This time you look at her more closely. The details of her face are haunting. Even with her weathered appearance, there's something oddly vivid about the faded eyes, as if there's a shadowy life in them. The head seems slightly turned to the side, as if it's staring directly at you, waiting for you to do something. You can't stay still anymore. Your instincts push you into action. You run to the front door, determined to get that thing out of your yard. Who could be doing this? Some kind of prank? Maybe a sleazy neighbor? You open the door and slowly approach. The night air is colder than it should be, almost freezing. The doll is there, inert, but now it seems different, heavier, more real, like something is inside it, waiting. You hesitate for a second, but then, without thinking too much, you pick up the doll and throw it into a trash bag. It falls with a thud. You take a deep breath and go back inside the house. The silence thickens in the air again, but you feel a false sense of relief. You close all the doors and try to relax on the couch, convincing yourself that it was all just a sleazy prank or, at most, strange coincidences that made you paranoid. Time passes. The night progresses and little by little, tiredness takes hold of you. Maybe this is the end of this nightmare feeling. Maybe, when dawn comes, everything will return to normal. But, in the middle of the night, while you are sleeping soundly, something wakes you up. A low sound, a whisper, a scream. You open your eyes. The room is plunged into shadows, but the sound continues. It seems to come from somewhere far away, yet close at the same time. A soft, anguished cry, like that of a lost child. Your heart starts beating faster again. You try to ignore it, but the sound grows louder. What is happening? Reluctantly, you get out of bed, each step echoing on the wooden floor of the house. The sound guides you to the living room. As you get closer, the crying becomes clearer, more insistent. Finally, as you reach the bedroom, you stop abruptly. There she is, the doll. Somehow, she is back. She is in the middle of the room, sitting, her gaze fixed on you. The crying stops immediately when you look at her, but the room is filled with a cold, heavy, almost suffocating presence. You freeze. How is this possible? How did it come back? Answers seem to slip from your mind, but something inside you tells you that you need to get rid of this doll, and fast. Gripping it tightly, you run out of the house again, almost tripping in your haste. Your plan is now clear. Throw it into the lake. Sink it into the icy waters until it disappears forever. You run to the water's edge, your feet hitting the wet ground and the moon shining palely above. The sound of the water lapping against the banks is deafening as you get closer and closer. When you finally get there, you lift the doll above your head, ready to throw it into the water. But before he can, she moves. No, this time it's not your imagination. The doll's arms move slowly, as if they have a life of their own. And then you hear that voice again, not as a whisper, but as a chilling scream. You can't escape. The doll falls from your hands and sinks rapidly into the dark water. You step back, heart racing, and stare at the surface, expecting to see it disappear. But instead, something even more terrifying happens. The waters begin to bubble. From the bottom of the lake, slowly, a figure begins to emerge. It is small, the size of a child, with empty eyes and pale, almost translucent skin. Its feet are bare, leaving wet footprints on the ground as it slowly approaches you. And then, the voice returns, now coming directly from that pale figure. I see you. I always have. I hope you liked the story, because the second story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. Imagine that, as you and your dog walk hurriedly, the voice keeps echoing, as if it were following you. Sometimes it is clear, other times distorted, but always filled with desperation. You try to convince yourself that it is just your imagination, but the uneasiness grows. Then a cold breeze blows, making you shiver. The wind seems to carry with it a whisper that mixes incomprehensible words and a cry for help. You look at your dog, who is now still, his eyes fixed on a shadow moving between the trees. Determined not to let fear take over you, you move forward and bring your dog closer to you. The trees to your left seem to close in, as if forming a dark corridor leading to some unknown place. The moonlight barely penetrates the dense canopy, creating shadows that dance as if they were alive. Suddenly, the voice echoes again, closer than before. Help! This time, you can feel the palpable desperation, as if someone really needs help. Your heart races. With a jolt, you push off the sidewalk and head toward the entrance to that dark hallway. With each step, the silence grows deeper and the sound of your dog's paws becomes almost a drumming beat to the beat of his anxiety. You feel the need to discover the source of that voice. After all, who could be out there in the middle of the night calling for help? As you approach the trees, you notice a small clearing. In the center appears a figure. A little girl, with tattered clothes and a frightened look, is sitting on the ground. Her hair is messy and she looks much paler than a little girl should be. Please, she says, help me. You hesitate. Something doesn't feel right. Her scared expression is genuine, but there's something about her presence that sends a chill down your spine. Your dog growls again, as if warning you of an unseen danger. The girl reaches out her hand and something on it glistens in the moonlight. An object, perhaps a toy or a necklace. You don't remember ever seeing anything like it before. I'm lost, she says, her voice shaking. Please take me home. You wonder if she really is a lost girl, or if she is something else. Perhaps an illusion created by the darkness. Then, you decide you need to investigate further. Where does she live? You ask. The girl looks at the ground and says, I don't remember. Just follow me, please. Something inside you hesitates, but compassion speaks louder. You begin to walk towards her, your dog at your side. The clearing seems to narrow, as if the surrounding trees are getting even closer, making it difficult to see your way back. As you move forward, the girl stands up and begins to walk forward, but with each step, the darkness seems to deepen. You notice the shadows around her moving, as if they are alive. An icy chill runs down your spine, and your dog's voice, once low, now echoes with a sharp warning. Go back, she seems to say with her eyes. But you continue, drawn by the need to help. The girl turns, and her gaze is now piercing, as if she's testing your courage. You have to come with me, she insists, and at that moment, you notice something on her face that wasn't there before, a smile that doesn't seem human. The atmosphere changes quickly. The trees, which once seemed simply gloomy, now twist and writhe, and you sense that the clearing is no safe place. Wait! You shout, but the girl has already started running, disappearing into the darkness. You hesitate for a second, but the instinct to protect your dog propels you forward. "Come on," you say, pulling him with you as you run after her. But as you run, the ground beneath your feet seems to become unstable, as if the ground itself is moving. As you turn around a tree, you see the girl again, but she's far away now, closer to a shadow that seems to take shape. Your heart races and you realize that the voice echoing in your mind is no longer a cry for help, but a seductive, almost hypnotic call. "Come closer," he murmurs, his voice echoing in a tone that makes your skin crawl. "I just want to play." In that moment, you realize that you are not simply running after a lost girl. You are drawn to a place where the rules of reality no longer apply, where calls for help become traps and shadows become your enemies. Enjoying the adrenaline, you and your dog run towards the exit of the clearing, knowing that you need to escape before night and darkness take over. The trees seem to want to hold you back, but you refuse to stop. Your dog's paws hit the ground and, with one last look back, you see the girl, now surrounded by shadows, and with a wide smile on her face. As you cross the last branch, you finally find yourself back on the sidewalk, panting, with the dog at your side. The silence that once seemed so oppressive is now a relief. The moon shines down on you, and the world seems brighter and safer. You look back one last time, but the clearing is gone, as if it never existed. The echo of that voice still resonates in your mind, but you know you made the right choice. The darkness may be tempting, but the light will always prevail, and you'll be happy to be safe. And as you walk back home, you realize that even in times of doubt and fear, love and protection can light up even the darkest paths. I hope you liked the story, because the third story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. I hope you liked the story. It was an autumn night and the dry leaves danced in the wind as the full moon lit up the small town of Ravenwood. This was a quiet town, where everyone knew each other and the routine was almost always the same. But that night something strange happened. The first story begins in the Clarkson house. They were a normal family, with 2 small children, a dog named Max, and a house at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by tall, dark trees. Everything was going well until, in the middle of the night, the mother, Mrs. Clarkson, woke up to a strange sound. It was the sound of footsteps, but they weren't coming from upstairs, where the children's rooms were. These footsteps echoed from the basement. She turned over in bed, wondering if she was dreaming. Her husband, Mr. Clarkson, was sleeping soundly next to her, but then the sound came back, louder this time, and it was impossible to ignore it. She felt a chill run up her spine. Do you know that feeling that something is wrong? It is. She slowly stood up, trying not to make any noise, and walked down the stairs, feeling each step creaking beneath her feet. Reaching the kitchen, which led to the basement door, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. The door was ajar. That basement was always closed. Always. Who would have opened it? Max, the dog, was in the living room, restless, growling softly at the door, as if he too sensed something wasn't right. She stood frozen for a moment, not knowing what to do. Part of her wanted to run to the bedroom and wake her husband, but another part thought it was best to figure this out before she scared everyone. Pulling out her cell phone, with shaking hands, she lit the path in front of her and slowly opened the door. A soft creaking sound filled the air and the smell of mold and damp would wafted up from the basement. Max stood there, still, not daring to follow his owner. She walked down a few steps, her heart racing, when she heard it again. Footsteps! But this time they were coming from upstairs. That's right, from inside the house, on the floor where her children slept. Panic gripped her. Without a second thought, she ran upstairs, already screaming for her husband. She woke up scared, and together they ran up the stairs, ready to protect their children from any intruders who were there. But when they got to the bedrooms, there was no one. Everything was as it should be. The children slept peacefully, not even noticing the commotion. It was then that Mr. Clarkson, still with his heart racing, noticed something that made his blood run cold. The window in the children's room was open. He was sure he locked it before he went to sleep. Something or someone had come and gone through the window. They called the police, and of course their first suspicion was that someone had broken into the house. A burglar, perhaps, but there were no signs of a break-in. Nothing was out of place except the open window and the basement door that should never have been open. The police searched the entire house, and in the end, they found nothing. There is no evidence that anyone was actually there. The story was filed away as an anomaly. But ever since that night, Mrs. Clarkson has never been able to sleep well. She swore that, from time to time, she still heard those footsteps, always starting in the basement and then moving up the stairs. It was as if the intruder had never really left. Now, the second story. Well, this one happened in the same town, but years earlier, and it also started with a strange feeling. This was the case with the Blake brothers, who lived on a remote farm. They had a huge barn full of old machines that their father used to repair and sell. But their father had passed away months earlier, leaving the two of them alone to take care of the property. One cold night, older brother David woke up to the sound of something heavy dragging outside near the barn. He looked out the window, but it was so dark he could barely see the silhouette of the building in the fog. He thought it might be an animal, maybe a deer, and went back to sleep. The next night, the sound came back, but this time it was longer. It felt like someone or something was dragging a heavy weight across the yard. David, already intrigued, decided he was going to see what it was. He grabbed a flashlight and went outside, crossing the dew-soaked grass. The sound stopped as he approached the barn. No one was there. He walked around but found nothing out of the ordinary. But when he returned home, he noticed something. The barn lock was open, even though he was sure he had locked it. He felt that chill run down his spine again. Something was wrong. He entered the barn. The air smelled of oil and old metal, as always, but a machine in the back that he hadn't touched in years was out of place, like someone had tried to move it. On the third night, the sound came back, but this time, it was different, in a higher pitch, like it was closer. When David returned to the barn, he found something that made his heart stop for a moment. In the middle of the dirt floor were footprints. Human footprints. But they were footprints coming from inside the barn. Like someone had been hiding inside all this time. These two cases left the Ravenwood police perplexed. Nothing went missing at the Clarkson house. Nothing went missing at the Blake brothers' farm either. But in both cases, there was a presence. Something that couldn't be explained. And to this day, townspeople still talk about these stories. Some say they were just coincidences. Others believe there was a lot more to what happened than any rational explanation could explain. Now, if you were in their shoes, what would you do? Tell me which story made your hair stand on end? Tell me which one you liked the most? Because in the next video, the story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories.